Humblemud.
There will be times in your life, if you're lucky, where you encounter a game that you deem mechanically perfect for one reason or another. It might be a game that immediately feels great, like Super Mario Odyssey. This was a game that took everything Nintendo had learned from the moment they started labbing out Mario's 3D movement in the castle courtyard in Mario 64, and then expanded upon that 21 years later. Or it may be a game that presents you with a seemingly insurmountable challenge, but through that challenge and strife, you start to see the beauty and the rhythm that the game had within it all along. There are games you probably don't have a firm grasp on yourself, but just by looking at the people who have put the time in, you have an immense respect for what the game allows its players to do. Lastly, there are games I've played even within the last year that aren't mechanically perfect, but with practice can become incredibly rewarding to master. I've been lucky enough to discover a good handful of games over the course of my lifetime that have given me that realization. That moment where you kind of just stop and sit back for a second and tell yourself, wow, this game was expertly made, before you press on. I experienced this realization all over again, unexpectedly, during my last days of 2024 when I began playing Code Bunny. Code Bunny is a game that hit all of my plans and everything I thought I knew about my 2024 gaming experience like a train. I received a code from Team 7th Star around the time I was finishing up my Golden Sun playthrough, so I wasn't able to get to the game until December 17th, just 2 days before its official release. And though, as you'll soon learn, I loved the game, I had a lot already planned for the channel and I couldn't fit a video in until now. It didn't help that I got sick. But thankfully, I'm feeling better now, so let's get to the review so you can see if this is up your alley. And full disclosure, as I said earlier, I did receive a code bunny, for this game, but all of the thoughts expressed in this video are my own, and Team 7th Star is seeing this review the same time that you are. Code Bunny is a speedy, speedrun-friendly game, allowing you to choose between 2 characters to lead a campaign, and only by playing through both campaigns of both characters can you get a better sense of the game's full story. The way that these 2 campaigns play off of each other and how playing one story reveals secrets of the other story was just simply brilliant to me. On the gameplay front, this is a game that wears its influences on its sleeves. That influence is most immediately noticeable from the first level that pays tribute to Mega Man X's opening level. And when one of the writers on the game's staff goes by the name Violetta Volnut, I think it's pretty clear that you're going to be getting a game where the Mega Man love runs deep. The music is absolutely killer and reminds me a lot of the classic Mega Man games I was playing earlier this year. You have a lot of familiar sound effects and music going on, and just about everything regarding the game's sound design in general screams Mega Man in the best of ways. Between the enemies, setting, Hazel's blaster, and everything I just mentioned sound-wise, I felt right at home. I went from Mega Man 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to Code Bunny, and it just made sense to me. However, this isn't Mighty Number 9. This is a quality game all on its own that does what the best indie games do best. It honors its influences while also becoming something else on its own. If you don't mind humoring me and letting me liken this to a wine tasting for a second, playing this game gave me strong notes of Mega Man, of course, but through Hazel's campaign, I also got hints of the original Ninja Gaiden, Shinobi, or Strider games. Meanwhile, while I skated over to the elegant Axel, a former ice skater turned warrior for justice, that's where the Sonic vibes come in. Even in just his movements, he's reminiscent of Shadow the Hedgehog as he calmly skates through levels with blazing speed, and you've got these rail sections in his campaign that really add to that Sonic feel as well. In both campaigns, there are these top hats that you can hop into, a fun little play on the rabbit in a magic hat motif that feels a lot like the springs littered all over Sonic's landscape. When it comes to how the 2 main characters play, Axel is a speed skater who uses his fists and his feet to attack, but more often than not you'll likely be using his spin attack the most, as this helps you get more mobility and also literally allows you to Beyblade your enemies to death, which is pretty awesome. And while Hazel has a sword, which makes you think she might be more of an up close and personal type of fighter, she can also use her blaster to mark an opponent. Now, marking an opponent doesn't do damage to them, but it does allow her to teleport to an enemy once they're marked and take them down with her sword. You can mark multiple enemies at once and then teleport between all of them with one press of a button. The more damage that Hazel dishes out, the more damage she can possibly take, so she's very much a high risk, high reward type of character. Meanwhile, Axel actually builds up a shield as he fights. And also, Axel can gain access to special moves once you build up his combo meter. Lastly, to top off this complex flavoring of retro game goodness, we need to have something that brings this game to the 21st century. And luckily, Team 7th Star was able to capture some of that hidden magic that I think makes indie giants like Celeste and Katana Zero so good. These are indie games that encourage you to die, get up, and try again in the most unobtrusive way. The music doesn't stop, your character doesn't stop, you don't stop. Whether you respawn or rewind, these games keep their claws stuck in you not only because the barrier to retry is so low, but also because they marry their story so well to their gameplay, which keeps you wanting to press forward. Code Bunny is the same way. I'm not going to show any footage for spoiler reasons, but the final boss took me about 8 or 9 tries in Hazel's campaign. I kept going, and when I finally figured out what worked for me, and also mid-fight discovered something I could do that I didn't realize I could do across the course of her entire campaign until then, I got into this manic, rhythmic, third-eye opening experience where I was just laying down the business on this final boss for a minute straight before finally missing an input, and it was riveting. Now, I'll never be Daigo from Street Fighter III Third Strike, but the thing I was able to pull off in this boss fight was my Evo Moment 37 for 2024. And the best part about this discovery is now that I'm aware that I can do this particular thing, I was able to go back and end an earlier segment of her campaign on my own terms thanks to my newfound fighting prowess. And while the campaigns are short, I was able to beat Hazel's campaign in about 2 hours and Axel's in even less time. This isn't a negative in my book, as the game is so inviting to replay due to the sheer amount of depth of mobility that your characters have, and the fact that you can try to get S rankings based on the amount of combos you land and how quickly you get through the levels. When I think about some of my favorite games of all time, like Journey, A Short Hike, Super Mario Land 1 and 2, or Mega Man 2, which this game in particular takes a lot of influence from, the length of a game is not an indicator of its quality, especially considering that each level has multiple routes in a high and low style, reminiscent of the classic Sonic games. There are so many permutations of a single run that you can experience, and when you factor in the movement possibilities and all the different things you can learn by replaying this game constantly with your characters, you're getting a lot of game for your money if this is the kind of thing you're into, which, by the way, I think is reasonably priced at $10. And yes, you can also play a classic mode version of the game for repeat playthroughs, so you can play this like a traditional retro game without the cutscenes, and of course there's a speedrun mode. However, for your first runs of Hazel and Axel's playthroughs, I'd highly recommend playing the story mode, as there's a lot going on behind the scenes in the story, and I found it quite emotionally moving at times. I actually still play the story mode mostly myself, because each time I replay it, there's usually a detail or two that I'll catch that I missed previously. Additionally, there are moments of downtime in between missions where your characters can just sit and chat, and that really helps flesh out the game's world and gives you some nice character moments as well. Now, I'm intentionally trying to keep certain things vague because the true genius of this game is realized best when you discover it on your own. But I want to touch back on something that I said earlier. I stated that games like Celeste, Katana Zero, and Code Bunny work because they marry their gameplay so well to their story. Well, this is true for both Hazel and Axel's campaign. But it's Hazel that I have a soft spot for, as it was her campaign that I chose to start the game with. With that said, it was on my second playthrough with Hazel when I realized that everything about her gameplay is tied to and mirrors her characterization and the things that she's been through. Again, I'm not going to spoil what that is, but if you play this game and see her story through until the end, I want you to ask yourself why she plays the way that she does. She has this interesting curse mechanic where the more damage she does, the more vulnerable she becomes to taking damage herself. And this ties in so beautifully to the story that's told to you about her in the game, from the possessions she has to the way she talks and thinks about herself. There's this duality present in both Hazel as a character and Hazel as a fighter that's so intertwined, and it was inspiring for me to realize this once I let the initial excitement of playing the game wash over me. Axel's story has a strong theme about brothers, and if you watched my channel for a while, you know I lost my younger brother in early 2024, so this gutted me in a cathartic way. I also had a lot of moments in Axel's campaign that totally took me aback too, and again, I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say I have to give some serious props to Team 7th Star for doing something atypical that makes you think outside the box, outside of normal game conventions. In a post-Undertale, post-Psycho Mantis type of world that we live in, that's a hard thing to do, but they pulled it off in my opinion. Axel's campaign at a glance is the easier one of the two, as he is a bit tankier of a character and can also still dish out damage pretty easily. I talked to the devs about this this, and this was a conscious decision. Axel's campaign is probably where you should start because it's easier on the surface, and then you can go back to Hazel's to get more of a challenge. That doesn't mean it's wrong to play Hazel's campaign first. I mean, that's what I did. And also, don't let this make you think that Axel doesn't have any tricks up his sleeve. Much like Ryu in Street Fighter or Mario in Smash, pickup and playability doesn't indicate a lack of depth. I want to first admit that I am far from an expert on Code Bunny yet, as I'm still early in my journey of mechanical mastery, which is so exciting. But Axel does have a hidden depth to his movement that, like I said, I haven't gotten a full grasp on just yet. The last thing I'll leave you with is this. It's something I wrote to one of the team's staff as I was gushing about the game and thanking them for giving me the opportunity to play it early. I said, "This game has a powerful message. I like that in general, the thing you can take away from Axel, Hazel, and even another character who I'm not going to spoil, who you'll meet in the game's story if you play it, is that it's okay to move on when you lose someone, to feel happiness, to be yourself. Even if you face an incredible loss, you shouldn't feel survivor's guilt for still being here while the other person isn't. And you also shouldn't put so much pressure on yourself to live for that person who's passed. You can be motivated to be better, sure, but you have to be true to yourself and what you want as well. You are not the things that have happened to you, and it's okay to strive to look forward, even if it seems like your past is all that you can think about sometimes." As someone who lost his brother and has struggled a lot to keep a brave face on during this time, I mean, this was my first Christmas without my brother, Code Bunny was a really nice thing to receive right before Christmas. And also, it's just simply fun as hell. This is a game I won't forget, and if you play it, I don't think you will either. If you like the looks of this game, do yourself a favor and support the devs by getting it on itch.io or Steam. They worked on it for years and it shows. $10 is a great price for a quality indie like this. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay humble.